Hi, Amos. How are you?
I'm good. You recently had a trip to kosher, some food.
Yes, very exciting news. We have the good oil. The good oil is now kosher certified. You can go buy it at any store. It's available in Countdown. It's available at New World and other stores.
Good oil, as opposed
the
to
good
the bad
oil.
We don't want that one.
It's the brand called the good oil. It's rapeseed oil and otherwise known as canola oil and sunflower oil.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, whoever gave the name rapeseed,
Not
it's
a
a
good
bad name. Bad name, but that's what it's called. So I didn't make it up. And also Barker's of Geraldine, Barker's New Zealand, not the clothing company, but the fruit processing company. They make jams. They make a lot of different items.
Yeah,
they have
things.
They have potentially hundreds of items, and I'm telling you this with valid information. They signed our kosher contract.
Yeah.
And they will become a kosher facility for at least many of their products.
Yeah.
And they have literally hundreds of potential products they can certify within the next month or two. Very exciting. It opens up a lot of kosher opportunities for locals in New Zealand, travelers. So that's really, really exciting news.
Very good.
Yeah. That's a quick update about that.
Speaking about exciting news, we're now available on a bunch of new platforms. We're available on Anchor and Spotify and Google Podcasts, soon to be also available on iTunes Podcasts, possibly. And we have an Instagram, so go follow. Our Instagram is EUTS_podcast, and it's the big orange circle with the E as our logo, and that's our Instagram. So please go follow it. And we started about a bit of your kosher work, and that's a bit of work that a rabbi does. And
not every community rabbi.
Not every community rabbi.
But in New Zealand we do that, and many rabbis around the world act as either dealing with the administration of kosher certification or the actual kosher certification of either places, restaurants, in my case, companies.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so
manufacturers.
This week we received the news of Lord Rabbi Jonathan Sacks passing away.
Yes, it's very sad.
A very significant rabbi in New Zealand and certainly around the world. So this episode today is dedicated to his memory.
Yes, it is. And it was very sad hearing that he passed away on Shabbat. They say tzaddikim, righteous people, pass away on Shabbat. I will also be relating to Rabbi Sacks in my drasha this Shabbat, even though I think this podcast will be publicized after Shabbat.
Yeah.
So when this podcast is publicized, some of the stories that I'm sharing on this podcast, I would have also shared on Shabbat, Parashat Chayei Sarah, which is very fitting because that's when Avram buries Sarah, and it deals with burial, it deals with Kavura, which is Jewish burial, and the whole story of Avraham. And in the Hesped, there are many Hespedim, which are eulogies, said for Rabbi Sacks on the Sunday, including his daughter, which is a real heart-wrenching one.
I think they're all available on YouTube.
They are all available on YouTube.
And Facebook.
When I was on the road, I heard them because I had Bluetooth in my car, and I just heard them as I was driving around the South Island, certifying different plants. And they're very inspirational. And Rabbi Ephraim Mervis, who unfortunately couldn't be there because of his health situation, he had to be isolated. Somebody else read his eulogy on his behalf, and the one thing he started with was how the other former chief rabbi of the United Synagogues of the UK and the Commonwealth, Rabbi Jacobovitz, who was also connected to New Zealand, very, very much so, was in his Hesped, it said, Nasi Elohim Ata B'tochenu, right? A godly prince you are among us. And that's how Ephron Achiti introduces Avraham Avinu, or calls Avraham Avinu.
Yeah.
In the Parsha of Chayei Sarah, that's how he was being eulogized. And so, in a similar fashion, that's what Rabbi Mervis and others, that's what Rabbi Dr. Belovsky and others referred to Rabbi Sacks, Zichrono Livracha, as Nasi Elohim Ata B'tochenu, a godly prince you are among us.
Yeah.
Very, very special. It is not a title that everybody gets. Definitely not a title that every rabbi gets.
No.
It's a very, very special title.
It's very fitting for the timing.
It is.
And
it was the Sunday before Parshat Chayei.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's the week of Chayei.
That's right.
So his last international trip was over here in Wellington, in New Zealand.
Yes. That was in December 2019.
Yeah.
And I wanted to share with our listeners a little bit of the background of the trip. I won't share the whole story. I also won't give away all of our secrets. How we got the illustrious Rabbi Sacks and the tour group, the VIP tour group that he came with to actually choose Wellington over Auckland for a Shabbat.
Yeah.
Which is actually what happened.
Yeah. Goes back to last week because we're better in every
absolutely.
single way.
Absolutely. In every single way. So there was a tour guide. His name is Tzvi Lapian. He's in Jerusalem. He was leading the tour group. Long story short, he did come here in November of 2018, like a year before the trip, because he does all these adventure kosher tours.
Yeah.
That's what he does, among other things. Charges people a lot of money, and people come because they get an unbelievable trip, and all the food is kosher. They have Shabbat. They have Shabbat in communities. So it's for religious people to do adventure tours.
Yeah.
It's a very, very niche market, and that's why you can charge a lot of money. It's not for the faint of wallet or for the faint of heart. So, and there was the Gabbai from the Golders Green Shul was there. We had people from the U.S., people from Israel, from all around the world. It was very, very interesting. Mm-hmm. Rabbi Sacks is always a guest speaker. He basically doesn't get paid for the trip, but he got the trip for free. That was the deal. And he gets a free trip with his wife Elaine. Why? Because Tzvi Lapian and Elaine Sacks, the lady Elaine Sacks, I should say, were schoolmates in primary school. So they're friends. And so that's how we got Rabbi Sacks to join all of his tours, is basically Rabbi Sacks' vacation. What does Rabbi Sacks do on these tours? And he's done a number of them up until the last year, which is his last trip.
Yeah.
He actually enjoys the tour. He enjoys the food, and he gives like maybe one drasha, maybe 2 10-minute drashot a day. He doesn't meet with heads of state. He doesn't meet with political figures. He doesn't meet with organizations. He literally is on vacation. But for the Jewish community, he will speak in the community on Shabbat.
Yeah. And
they also granted us an opportunity to eat with them for Sudash Lashit. Only one meal. We were giving very, very, very strict limitations on our community involvement with the tour group. The tour group ended up paying the center like a nominal sum of money as well. And they ate here for 4 days, from Wednesday evening all the way to Sunday morning.
Wow.
So they were here for a long, and we had Ben Sagi cook for them. It was the whole thing. It took literally a year of planning, a lot of back and forth, and it was an amazing event for the community because on that Shabbat we had people fly in even from Auckland.
Yeah. And
a lot of people came to the shul just to hear Rabbi Sacks. We had 50 community members, meaning there were 75 people in total, including the tour group, on Seder Shlishit, which is the third meal, and we had about 200 people at shul on Shabbat morning.
I remember that Shabbat very clearly because I stopped playing cricket to come to shul.
Yes, which is a big deal.
It's a huge deal.
So Rabbi Sacks, I told Rabbi Sacks that I'm going to give him an introduction, but I mean, this sounds a little bit kind of black humor, but I told him at the time, I didn't want it to sound like a eulogy. You know, like sometimes when you introduce rabbis, you basically go through, he's so great, and here's his accomplishments, and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to do that, and I wanted to be short and sweet. So I got a lot of compliments on my introduction. My introduction was like this. I basically said, Ezu ben Chorin, who is a free person, someone who learns Torah, and Yoshev Osek b'Torah, makes Torah his business, and I said, Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sacks is on vacation with his wife, Lady Elaine, with his tour group.
Yeah.
And what does he do on vacation? He gets up and gives a drasha to his shul. So you see, that is a true free person. And I introduced him.
Yeah.
I was welcome to give a drasha. I walked down. He basically just walked past me. But a lot of people, because he was like in his zone, and a lot of people though thought it was a really, really good opening. It was literally a minute and a half, and I could speak for a long time. So I was like, sure.
I think it was the shortest time you've ever spoken in a shul.
Almost the shortest time.
Yeah.
During level 4, it was the shortest time. It was like 1 minute.
You weren't allowed to speak.
That's right, because I wasn't allowed to speak. But you said it was the shortest time. Okay. Anyways, so Amos, why don't you? Because you were there in shul.
Yeah.
And I also want to give you an opportunity to share some stories because I have personal ones I'm going to share.
So
why don't you mention about what Rabbi Sacks spoke about?
So he spoke about, and I distinctly remember that he spoke about this because this was maybe a month before my friend was getting married, and I was to speak at his wedding, and I was racking my brain about, what can I say, what I don't know what to say, and luckily Rabbi Sacks came to shul, and so he gave a drasha that was, I don't remember the details, but I do remember the main premise being the distinction between the word I and the word we, and it's both a singular noun, singular, but they are both, one is singular and one's plural, both first person, and the big thing that stuck at the end was his finishing statement, which was the only difference between ill and well is you turn I into we. Mm-hmm. And he talked about the fact that the words have power to them, and in the world at the moment, a lot of people are very focused on themselves, and the fact that people are very focused on themselves shows in their words as well. And the word that is often used is I, in that sense. And then when we use the word we, people become stronger and stronger, and the world becomes a better place.
And you mentioned about our city.
Yeah, right? And you mentioned about our city, and we live in Wellington. He said the only difference between Illington and Wellington is you turn I into we. That's how he finished, and he walked off the bima, and he
left everybody with a blessing.
Yeah.
And it was just a beautiful oration. Like, he could have just given
and it wasn't
another cookie cutter drasha. He tailor made it.
Yeah.
For Wellington.
Yeah.
And I was thoroughly impressed.
And it wasn't long either. It wasn't a long drasha.
It was 20 minutes.
It didn't feel like 20 minutes.
Mm-hmm. I'm just telling you.
Yeah, but like, you've seen some of his lectures that can feel like short, and it's like an hour.
Well, TED Talks are 18 minutes, by the way, and that's basically my gauge for a length of a drasha. Anywhere up to 18 minutes. Or
rounds up to
less.
20.
Rounds up to 20.
Yeah.
TED Talks are 18. Now, Rabbi Sacks did give a lot of TED Talks, a number of them. In those TED Talks, just to continue that point, he talked, especially when he's in North America. There's one in I just remember in Vancouver, British Columbia. He always talks about the greatness of American history is we the people. He always just talked about that. We the people. And he said if we embrace that concept, continuing the same concept that you talked about.
Yeah.
And he was so enamored by that, even though today I think he would think slightly differently of American politics because there's a huge rift, which is another conversation within America. But he says that is very, very important. And he always talked about how that was like what British history was lacking. And American history, at least classic American history, had we the people.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So that's one of his very important teachings that he taught again and again and again. So meaning the drasha that he gave here in Wellington was simply another one of his drashot on that subject that he literally talked about around the world to all audiences, Jewish and non-Jewish alike.
Yeah. And it was really good. Like you listen to some of his lectures that are an hour long. You're sitting there listening for an hour, but it feels like you're listening for 5 minutes. Like
Yeah.
the flow of time is like gone. Like you lose all concept because you're so, don't want to say obsessed, but you're like in that sort of flow state where you're just listening to the words that he's talking. That's it.
Well, he's a brilliant speaker. A, because he was impeccably dressed, and B, he had an unbelievable voice, and C, he was a really good public speaker. And he has refined public speaking.
Yeah.
As far as the flow of ideas, as far as his presentation.
And he had this very, very good habit, or not habit, but like a skill of turning something that's incredibly complex, very, very simple, and making it very understandable to everyone.
Yes, which was in one of his eulogies, actually, that was something that he worked on in his life, because initially, learning philosophy as a young person, he was actually much more into writing complex ideas, and was proud of writing things that were unreadable, meaning that were, above and beyond the level of most people's comprehension. Yeah. And then he eventually adapted that when he joined the rabbinate, because he realized he actually, like you said, he has to take those complex ideas and simplify them. And he was brilliant at that when he actually focused on that, put his mind to it.
Yeah.
And that was really amazing. On Sudash Lishit, he actually shared what I thought was the best drasha I've ever heard from him. And I've heard a lot. The one Kohelet stands
really
out.
Good one.
It's also a very good one. I mean, I think all of his drashot are very good. So it's hard to rank them. But this one was especially good because he asked the question of what is Masechet Emunah? Where do we find? Why don't we have a tractate in the Mishnah about faith, about belief?
Yeah,
it doesn't exist. You have one about Sukkot, one about damages, one about purification, different sacrifices, etc. Shabbat, Yoma. But you don't have about Emunah. So where is it? Why isn't it mentioned? You mentioned a conversation he had with an atheist or about atheist about this, because he had a lot of conversations with atheists, agnostics, and people who were self-proclaimed, non-believers in God. You can have those philosophical conversations, hold his own, and even, win, so to speak, the argument or the debate. And he said there has to be an answer. It has to be. His answer was, there was a 30-minute talk, but his answer is the Sidur. And he went through the Sidur, the prayer book, and he said the way the prayer is developed is in the various stages of development, from recognition all the way to redemption to giving thanks.
Wow.
And that's it. I don't know if you're at the Sudash Lishit.
No.
I'm going to write it up.
Dad and my sister were, but...
Right. I have to write it up. It was a very compelling, very, very compelling understanding of the Sidur, and really helped me understand the Sidur much better, because you always wonder why of all these blessings in the Sidur, and even as a rabbi, or as a person who's davened pretty much my entire life, why is it so lengthy? Why can't it be shorter? What's the purpose of it?
It gives you a different appreciation for a Sidur.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because as you go to shul, it's a Sidur, like it's a prayer book, and you give it that respect, but it's not the same as a Chumash, say. What's the English name for the Chumash?
The Pentateuch.
Yeah, weird. Chumash.
Well, because Chumash.
What's the
Chumash? Pentagon is like pent is 5.
Yeah. Pentateuch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Stick with Chumash.
Mm-hmm. Seems a lot more.
So in that Sudash Lishit, and I also had 2 chances to have an actual private audience with Rabbi Sacks, which is very special.
Yes.
That's the second story I'm going to share. Picking him up in the car.
I've heard that story many times.
Yeah, it's a great story. But our listeners are going to hear the story. And the other story is, I don't know if I told you this, which is when we were at Sudash Lishit, I sat next to him, because I'm the rabbi.
Yeah.
It's great. And by the way, I have to say, on that note, as an aside, it's not because I'm so great that I sat next to him. Like, if you were the rabbi, you would have sat next to him. It's one of the things I learned from Simon Sinek. It's that you're not great. You get privileges because of your title, your position, not because of you. And if somebody else takes that position, you're somebody else, then your roles are reversed. So that's interesting.
Yeah.
So you have to appreciate that. It should give you a dose of humility.
It sounds like a whole new episode.
It is a whole new episode, but it's an important aside. Anyways, I'm sitting next to Rabbi Sacks, and the conversation that he was having with me and with everybody around him from the tour group was about Jewish engagement. For example, he's talking about how to engage Israelis in London. There's like 50,000 Israelis in London or greater UK. A lot of them. How do you engage them?
Yeah.
A lot of them are not connected to the community. Many of them could be intermarried.
Yeah.
Right? Or at least not connected. So he talked about bringing Hapoel Yerushalayim to play a basketball game in London, giving up free tickets in exchange for emails. He talked about he's had a lot of these ideas as well. Jewish engagement, an idea about having a concert with Yidan Reichel, and it was going to happen, but then politically got quashed because of some
politics,
Jewish organizational politics. Which is very unfortunate, but really amazing ideas. Like, he really had me going for that. And then he told a story, and also during that conversation, I've seen the only time that I've seen somebody cut Rabbi Sacks off, which is very interesting. I've never seen anybody do that, and one of the tourist members did that. I was like,
that takes some guts.
yeah, but they just did it because they were talking, and he was part of the group, right? So,
yeah.
That was really interesting. He shared a story, and I wrote an article about the story, which I'm going to publicize in the next coming days. And it's an amazing story, so I have to share it. His shul, that he's not the rabbi of, but he is there, and he fills in for a rabbi, I believe it's Rabbi Belovsky, if I'm not mistaken. He should live a long life. Rabbi Dr. Belovsky is the St. John's Wood shul in London. I think it's in the West End, but it's in the high-end part of London, basically. So all the high rollers and all the people, who live in the city, not the suburbs, It's not Finchley or anywhere else. It's like in the heart of London. St. John's Wood. Okay. And they bring in guest speakers. One of the guest performer they brought in was a Hasidic singer named Shulam Lemmer. You can look him up. I'm going to have a link to this song in the article, because he sang a song, I think, inspired by Rabbi Sacks. It was Parashat Vayera. I'm not sure about the year. It definitely wasn't last year. I think it was a few years. It could have been last year, or maybe a few years before. But it was very recently. And Shulam Lemmer has an amazing voice. Like, you can look him up. He has an unbelievable, beautiful, very gifted voice. He lives in the States. He's part of the Belzer Hasidim. He wears full Hasidic garb. He has peot and the whole bit. And he sings lots of songs. He sings English songs, sings Hebrew songs, sings Jewish songs. Like, he'll do Avinu Malkeinu. He'll do songs from the movie The Prince of Egypt. And he'll do another song, which I'm going to mention in a moment, inspired by Rabbi Sacks. That's not Rabbi Sacks' song, but that is composed by a Jewish composer. And it is not a Jewish song at all. So the question that, in the Sudah Shlishit, all the rabbis, what they decided, so there's many rabbis in the shul, they decided each rabbi is going to request Shulam to sing a song, right? Yeah. And give a whole spiel about it, and why the song is relevant, either because of the Barsha, or because of him being here, or because of current events, or whatever it is. And so every rabbi in turn asked for a Jewish song. There's a song called Hara Moriah, by Avram Fried, which has very much to do with the Akedah, right? And Parshat Vayera and others. Mizmor LeDavid, Yedid Nefesh, other songs. Great. Came Rabbi Sacks' turn, and he had pages that he printed out before Shabbat of a song that he was thinking of. Yeah. He asked a very, very deep question. The reason I'm mentioning this story is because, A, it's amazing, and 2, I believe it characterizes who Rabbi Sacks was. So, and I heard it firsthand. I heard it from Rabbi Sacks himself, this story. So it's firsthand. So he said, why does the Torah not mention what Avram and Yitzchak spoke to each other on the way to Mount Moriah? Like, what did they talk about? We don't know.
We don't. No, that's right.
And it's like one of those questions that when you think about it, it's a real question. But you never think about it.
Yeah.
So the question itself is a brilliant Torah question. Right?
Yeah.
It's a brilliant Torah question. And if they would sing a song, what song would represent what they talked about? Open-ended question. I don't know. So he thought about it long and hard. And he said, you can't really find a Jewish song. But there's a Jewish composer called Claude Michel Sonberg, I believe, who wrote a play about the French Revolution. And in that play, you know what play I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
Les Miserables. Right?
Yeah.
So in that play, he writes a song probably inspired by the Akedah called Bring Him Home. Right? I'm telling you, as I'm telling the story, like, it still brings chills to my spine, right? Bring him home, bring him home.
Yeah.
Right? It's an amazing song. Now, so he goes to Shulam and he says, Shulam, I want you to sing the song that Avram sang to Hashem while they're walking to the Akedah. Bring him home. He says, Shulam, and you have to understand, all the Belzer Hasidim from London came to the Seudah Shlishit, and the people of St. John's Wood, and a whole bunch, like, there's hundreds of people in this room.
Yeah.
Right? There's a lot of people. Shulam is like this top-notch Hasidic singer, and he asked Shulam to sing a song from Les Miserables. Out of all the songs he could have chosen.
Yeah.
And he says, Shulam, do you know this song? He's like, what do you mean do I know this song? I've sang it thousands of times. Says Shulam.
Yeah.
And Rabbi Sacks said, here are the words. I printed them before Shabbat. And he sang the whole song. And you can see a YouTube recording of him. It's brilliant. Like, he does an unbelievable job. It's really good. And then Shulam told Rabbi Sacks, after he sang the song, that he was so overwhelmed with emotion because he never made that connection between the song and the Akedah. It was an emotional song on its own, right?
Yeah.
He never made that connection. That thank God Rabbi Sacks printed the words, or else he would have completely forgot them. And that's, now, it's just an unbelievable story. Like, the question is a great Torah question.
Yeah.
From a great Torah scholar of our generation. And the chief rabbi of the United Synagogue, the Commonwealth, for a reason, right? It wasn't just another rabbi.
No, it wasn't.
He was a very significant rabbi, scholar, right?
Yeah, around the world.
Around the world,
Yeah.
Yes. So, right, that's what I'm getting at. He was able to bridge the gap of the secular and the holiness, the secular and the Torah together. His answer was taken from like a modern play, relatively modern play, a secular play, albeit written by a Jewish composer, right? But that's the case with a lot of Steven Spielberg's also a Jewish director.
Put an asterisk next to that.
Yeah, right. And he's able to take the sparks of holiness from the secular world and connect it to Torah in a way that is like seamless. It is brilliant, and it's like a once in a generation or once in multi-generation type of rabbi. Like, you don't have a Rabbi Sacks in every generation.
You won't get another one.
And if you do one, you have like one. And that's it. People came to the Seudah Shlishit, and even from Temple Sinai, not ranking anybody in their Jewishness, but Temple Sinai usually, they have usually more progressive Jewish leaders.
Yeah.
Part of the UPJ, right?
Yeah.
Union of Progressive Judaism in Australasia, which is great. I'm happy for them. It's a good thing they have a network. But there's people that actually came to the Seudah Shlishit and said that one person said, I consider Rabbi Sacks my personal rabbi. Now, Rabbi Sacks is like the voice of Orthodox Jewry in the world. Not of conservative Jewry, not of Reform Jewry, not of any other type of Jewry, of Orthodox Jewry, and everybody saw him as his rabbi, and everybody would pack the house to hear him. Because he had that credibility. Yeah. He was literally a global leader and orator, probably one of the 10 top, if not 5 top-notch best public speakers in his time, period. Like, around the world. I would venture to say.
Talk about legacy of a man. That's one hell of a legacy.
Yeah.
He's left behind.
And everybody in every stream of Judaism revered him.
Yes. Yeah.
That is rare.
Mm.
It's rare. Very, very rare. It's even rare for people in different streams of Orthodox to revere certain rabbis that are Orthodox.
Yeah.
Let alone to cut through all the streams. And to be somewhere like in Limud, I want to hear Rabbi Sacks. Everybody would like to get Rabbi Sacks.
Yeah.
Even to argue with him. Atheists want to get a piece of Rabbi Sacks. Just
Yeah.
to argue with him.
Yeah.
But they respect him. They respect him a lot. They'll disagree with him. He'll call them on why their atheism is false. Right?
Yeah.
But they'll have that conversation. They'll have it with him because he comes from a place of absolute knowledge and respect and actual debate.
Mm.
And he has the intellectual capacity, to keep up with even the greatest of intellectuals. Mm. So the other story is kind of a more personal side of Rabbi Sacks.
Yeah.
So that's about like how Rabbi Sacks is just a global, and that's what I'm writing about in my article. I'm writing that story with the link to the song.
Yeah.
And it's just a fantastic story.
And just where will that article be available?
It will be available on the WJCC, the Shmooze, the website.
Okay.
I will put it on my Facebook page as well. The link to
I can link that on the
article,
description as well.
And eventually it'll be in the Center News for those who get it. But so that's the Shmooze. So I picked up Rabbi Sacks. Now this is the minivan. Before I had the crash, it's my old minivan. Now I have a new minivan. It's a Toyota Estima 2006. Now I'm sure Rabbi Sacks and Lady Elaine Sacks are accustomed to traveling in very high-end cars. I would imagine if somebody picks them up from an airport, it's probably like a Mercedes or an Audi or a BMW or a nice Mustang. I don't know, something, a limousine. You know, like
or an Estima.
Or a Tesla maybe. Yeah, you don't have somebody in their minivan picking them up. Now I took them to the hotel. I was able to do that because I had arranged the trip. So I cleaned my car like it was Pesach. And then I vacuumed it again in a span of 2 weeks. I never vacuumed my car twice in 2 weeks. Not even for my own parents, by the way. And I told that to my mother. She's like, good, I'm glad you did it for Rabbi Sacks, you know? So, I pick him up from the airport. This is after a whole thing at Orot. We went to New World. We did a whole... I had this whole event with our school, with Orot, off-site. And it was a big deal. And I literally left the parents with the kids. You deal with the pickup, and all the parents have to pick them up off-site, you know, in Waitangi Park.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I'm going now. I don't want to be late. And I literally got there while they were collecting their baggage.
Yeah.
I got there, I parked, and I saw Rabbi Sacks and his wife, Lady Elaine, and I said, oh, hi, Rabbi Sacks. He's like, oh, you must be the Rav of Wellington, he tells me. In the meantime, I'm like pinching myself, wondering if this is like a dream. Because in any other Jewish community, I would not be picking up Rabbi Sacks.
No.
You'd have a greater rabbi or one of the great benefactors of the community or the president of the this, that, or the other picking him up. Or a chauffeur or an entourage of some sort, right?
Yeah.
So I'm picking him up in my minivan in Wellington. Great. So, anyways, Elaine, decided to sit in the middle back seat, which is fine. I made sure it was clean for her because I knew she was going to sit there, put their luggage in. They're fine. They're tired. They came straight from London all the way to New Zealand, and he was 70 at that point. They are tired.
Yeah.
It's
a big flight for anyone that doesn't know.
For anybody.
It's like
I did it with 4 kids.
18-hour flight or something.
Yeah. Not recommended for people who don't like flying.
No.
But not recommended for people with young kids either, unless you have to. So I pick him up and we schmooze. We had a long conversation about shechita, about Jewish communities, about different things. And he really he was tired, but he held his own in the conversation. And he knew this is my only time. Probably I'm going to have a private audience with him.
Yeah.
and I made sure my phone is actually on, but I wasn't answering my phone. I wasn't dealing with anything else. I just had a conversation with him while driving him to the Intercontinental Hotel in Wellington.
Yeah.
In the middle, and I had planned this, I was going to put on my Waze. Now, my Waze is programmed by my kids. They literally programmed each and all the directions.
Yeah.
So when I do my kosher trips or when I'm in the car, I hear my kids, and they don't just say, turn left, turn right. They'll scream like, turn left, please. Ah! Turn right. And they'll do like, in 400 meters. Like that. They'll do like, and it's really funny. It's really funny for anybody who hears it. And I do that with a couple of people, and they crack up. So I decided I was going to do this with Rabbi Sacks in the car, and I was going to see how he responded. So I'm in the middle of the city. I passed the tunnel, right, that after I tai-tai, right, that tunnel.
Yeah.
I'm now approaching the city in Taranaki, and I'm on Taranaki, or Kent Street, I think, and I put on Waze into the Continental Hotel, and surely enough, my kids come on. In 400 meters, turn left, please. Ah! Right? So that's the first thing he hears. And I kind of glanced at him from the driver's seat. He was sitting on the passenger seat. And he was rolling around laughing. He thought it was really funny. He thought it was very funny. And he's like, I didn't know Waze could do that. And I said, yeah, Rabbi Sacks, my kids programmed it, and you can personalize it. That's amazing. So I said, and my kids, they give me direction wherever I go. That's what I told him, right? Anyways, he's laughing. His wife is chuckling in the back there. I get them to the hotel. I get them to floor -2. I do a horrible parking job. And there's only stairs. There's no elevator. And I tell Rabbi Sacks, should we take the stairs? And then Elaine says, Jonathan, we are not taking the stairs. I'm like, great, we're not taking the stairs. So let's go up the ramp. We went up the right part of the ramp. Cars could literally come down. And I was like, please, 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 no cars come down and hit Rabbi Sacks. I don't want, Wellington Rabbi kills Rabbi Sacks. That's not a good headline. So anyways, thank God. We went there. There were elevators. We got there. Okay, checked in. And I offered him to come to the center with a shuttle for the dinner. He said he was just going to retire to his room. He was very tired at that point, and that was fine. And I said, I'll see you tomorrow for Shacharit. It was great. And then he left me with the blessing. So the blessing, so you can imagine he's closing his eyes, and he's putting his two hands up, like this. And he's like, Rabbi Tal, I want to wish you a blessing that your kids should continue to give you direction for your entire life, just like they do on Waze. So it's like one of those, and it was really, he was able to very quickly, he's so witty, right? He was able to take the experience he just had, being completely tired. He was really zonked. Yeah. Had the wherewithal to come up, instead of saying, okay, thanks, goodbye, see you tomorrow. Give me an actual, menschlichkeit blessing that I'm going to remember for my entire life.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of people like that.
No.
It's really, it's a real schut to have him. And we were his last international trip, and that's something really, really special.
And I think
we'll end with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's a bit of a shorter episode this week. Please, may his Rabbi Sacks' memory be a blessing unto us.
Rabbi Ya'akov Tzvi ben David Aryeh, Zichrono Livracha. His neshama should have an aliyah. His family should have a long life. And really, and as important, I should say, is that everyone should take the opportunity to listen to his talks on YouTube, to learn some of his Torah. Yeah. You can even buy some of his books. This is not a promo for his books.
Any of his Sidorim or Machzorim are really good. The commentary on them.
Yes, and the translation is good. A lot of things he wrote, he translated a lot. We don't have time to get into his whole legacy, what he left behind. But a lot of other people did. We shared stories that are very unique to us here in Wellington. You won't hear that anywhere else. So please feel free to share these stories as well around. I will be sharing this podcast also with the Office of Rabbi Sacks, a special website.
If you have any stories about Rabbi Sacks, please leave them in the comments. Let us know what they are.
Please. Stories. I know I'm looking for articles he wrote in 1991 specifically. I think on leadership or another topic, because my friend in Israel wants to learn them with me. So if you find any material, old material, rare material from Rabbi Sacks, please leave it in the comments. And please share this podcast around to your friends. It's on Spotify. It's on YouTube. It's soon going to be on...
It's on Google Podcasts. It soon will be on iTunes. Hopefully.
Instagram.
Or Apple Music.
Apple Music.
I don't know, whatever it's called. And we have our Instagram. Don't forget our Instagram, EUTS_podcast. And we'll have some wee teasers and things up there. Coming up soon. So have a good week, everyone. Next week we will be discussing about the infrastructure required to build a Jewish community.
That's correct.
Which
fascinating stuff, by the way. If you want to build a Jewish community from scratch, what do you need? And also, if you have an existing Jewish community, you want to build it up, what are the priorities? And we're going to debate that somewhat.
And it was meant to be this week's podcast, but we have more important things to talk about. But we will... you'll hear from us next week.
All right, Amos. Let's sign off. Have a great day. Shavua tov to everybody.
Shavua tov to everybody. Shavua tov to you, Rabbi.
Shavua tov to you, Amos.